think that we are ready. Thank you for joining us and thank you for using your cameras. One thing I noticed in the past year is that less and less people use the camera. They prefer just to put a picture there. And when it comes to a meeting like that, it's much nicer to see faces, because today, in contrary to last Friday, the goal is to have some discussion or at least a dialogue, and not to just for you to hear us talking for a long time. I remember that when we had meetings like that, we used to have many more people joining us. And I'm not surprised that that's not the case anymore, because there is a major election fatigue in Israel and among people who follow it, and even among Israelis, because the number of people who went to vote on Tuesday went down somewhat 4 or 5%,
which is tremendous in Israeli terms, because
yeah,
because in Israel, voting is part of the things that you do. Everybody goes and votes.
What did it wind up being, like 69% or something like that?
No,
like 64 and a half or something
like that. Very low.
It's very low, and at this point, they expected higher percentage because all Israelis are in Israel. Israelis like to travel a lot. They're very often outside of Israel. And now nobody lives because of the pandemic. So the expectation was a higher number. There's definitely a fatigue. People are just sick and tired of it. And people don't believe that there can be any change. So for those of you who have not read the newspapers in the past 4 or 5 hours, no, today is important, and part of the reasons, the way that we wanted to do it was to talk about it on Friday, just to give you some more information, to explain some of the nuances, so you'll be able to understand better what was happening on Tuesday. And we wanted to have the next meeting 2 days later, when we expected to have the final results. And we do have the final results. Something like 99.6% of the ballots were counted, and nobody expects any change. So we can really talk freely and base our assumptions and analysis on real numbers. But what's happening right now is that there are 2 camps, as I explained on Friday. There's no left versus right. There is anti-Bibi versus pro-Bibi. Okay, and this is really important to remember, because Bibi is on the right, right? The Likud party that he heads is a right-wing party. But on the anti-Bibi, there are other parties from the political right as well. Okay, so this election was 100% about between those who hate Bibi Netanyahu and those who love Bibi Netanyahu. And I deliberately use these hard words like hate and love, because that's what we see. When you love Bibi, you love him with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And it seems like the other way around is true. When you don't like him, your reaction is quite similar. So what we see so far is that Bibi did not achieve what he was hoping to achieve.
Oh, did you have lunch, Alon and Brian?
Bibi was not able to achieve what he was hoping to achieve. The maximum number of people that he has that might support him is 59. To remind you, there are 120 members of the Israeli Knesset. And for somebody to become the prime minister, in this case, they're only he, so I'll stay with this pronoun, he has to get 61 to support him. Bibi has 59. He probably has even less, because one of the parties that is called Yamina, Yamina means right wing, headed by Naftali Bennett, Bennett says that he will not, or at least he did not commit to join Bibi. So the best case scenario now, Bibi has 59. The question is whether the anti-Bibi camp can get together and form a coalition of more than 60 people in order to form a government. And your guess is as good as mine. So that's where we are now, okay? We'll continue, but do you have any questions or do you need us to clarify some of the nuances there? Because the Israeli system is so different than from the American system that it might be confusing.
So Alon, in Gali, I've been following this obviously in Gali, as you know. So the kingmakers right now, have they changed? Okay, we have Abbas and we have Bennett. Has that changed, or has that maneuvered any time in the last day?
You know what, do you mind just to explain what a kingmaker is?
Well, who holds Bibi's fate in control in terms of his ability to build a coalition?
Okay, so let's say that now there is Bibi's group has 59, the other group has 57.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if there is a party with at least 2 members of the Knesset, that if they join Bibi is the prime minister. If they join the other side,
right,
somebody else will be the prime minister. And we call that party the kingmaker. Okay, they are going to make the difference. In the past, the kingmakers used to be the ultra-Orthodox parties, because the ultra-Orthodox parties in Israel did not care much about politics. All they cared about was getting the funds and the laws that they wanted, for example, to exempt their children from military service and other things. And whoever gave it to them, they supported that party and they made that the head of that party the prime minister. However, a lot has changed since, and the ultra-Orthodox party became very much right-wing parties. Not because the Torah says that they need to be right-wing. Actually, the one who started Shas, the great rabbi who started the whole Shas, which is the ultra-Orthodox Sephardic party, he was quite on the left. He was talking about a peace agreement with the Palestinians, but it didn't matter because his people, his supporters were on the right, and now it was well established that the ultra-Orthodox can go only with Bibi. Okay, so Bibi right now has 30. You either have calculators or you can do this simple math. The ultra-Orthodox have 9 plus 7, right? They have 16. So where are we? We're at 46, right? Another party that's for me the real tragedy of this election. There is a very extreme right-wing party that received 6 seats in the Knesset.
The Kahanists?
Part of them are Kahanists, they are homophobic, they are anti-equality to women. It's not about a political opinion. By political, I'm talking about left, right, economy, Arabs. It's about who they are. They are the Israeli version of white supremacists, only that their target are Arabs. Okay. And now they added the gays, and they don't hate women as long as women know their place. And they know that they have to obey the men and follow the men's direction. And these guys got 6 seats in the Knesset. Okay, the one who started the whole extreme right was, and some of you remember the name, was Rabbi Meir Kahana. He was born in Brooklyn and made Aliyah to Israel. And he was outlawed by the Israeli court because his opinions were too extreme. He was talking about taking the Israeli Arabs and getting rid of them. It was talking about transfer of people. okay? Something that is not a legitimate opinion, at least in Israel, for a politician. And 30-something years after Kahana was outlawed and his party was cast out, his disciples made it into the Knesset, okay? And they have 6. And not all of them are the same. Not all of them are the same level of racist, homophobic, xenophobic, misogynistic, but this is bad news. This is really bad news, and many people on the right are quite embarrassed to be associated with them, but they are part of the BB group. The one who formed this right-wing, extreme right-wing, this is not just right-wing, because we'll show you there are about 4 or 5 right-wing parties, but this extreme right-wing was Bibi himself. Because what happened in previous elections, there were different small parties of extremists on the right, but none of them was strong enough to pass the threshold, the electoral threshold. Okay, I talked a lot about it on Friday. I'll just repeat it briefly. In order to get into the Knesset, you need to get at least 3.25% of the overall votes, meaning having at least minimum of 4 members of the Knesset. If you don't get this number of 3.25, which is what, something like 100,000 or something like that, your votes just disappear. Okay, so what happened in the past elections, since there were smaller groups, one emphasized the anti-Arabs, the other one emphasized anti-something else, Bibi, who is the most experienced politician ever in the history of Israel, maybe even of the world, was able to bring all these people together and form the extreme right-wing party. And Bibi was so effective, and they got 6 seats. This was one of the biggest surprise of the polls. All the polls predicted that they will cross the threshold, but nobody believed that they'll get more than 4. They got 6. Okay, so we had 46 plus 6, we're at 52. Okay, this is the Bibi camp. Now, the other right-wing party that split originally from the Likud, from Bibi's party, is called Yamina, headed by Naftali Bennett. Okay, they won 7 seats. Ideologically, there is almost no difference between them and the Likud party. They're both more or less the same shade of right wing, but Bennett hates, and his people hate Bibi. But even if they join Bibi, this is 59. Bibi needs 61. Where can Bibi get more? He needs 2 more members of the Knesset. Until this morning, people were talking, believe it or not, about a party by the name of Hadash. Ram, sorry, thank you. That's why I asked Gali to join me. Ram is on the very, very left. Ra'am is the party that represents the Muslim brothers. They're Arabs, okay? Are Israeli Arabs, Palestinian Israelis, but they are on the extreme left. Extreme left never joined the right, especially since the right is more or less not very friendly to the Arabs. But the head of this party said during the election campaign, he said that he would go with anyone who would give him the funding, the help, and the power that he wants. And people thought that he was kidding, because he said, you would not go with Bibi, because Bibi fights against you and said some horrible things about the Arabs in Israel. And he said, yeah, he said it, I don't care. As long as I can benefit my people, I will join any coalition. However, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So this guy is really interesting, and he said, I want budgets for the Arab population, and I will go with whomever give me those budgets. It can be Bibi, it can be whomever, I don't care. So that is a great break from the traditional Arab position that has always been by the left. So he got 5 votes. Four.
He lost one
Oh,
today.
he lost one today, okay.
What Patrick asked before, if something changed, this morning they counted only 90%, but by now they finished everything.
So they lost one?
So the Arabs, yes, they have only 4, and Meretz got an extra one, which is, we'll talk about Meretz.
Oh, okay.
So he has those 4 votes, and he can theoretically go with Bibi. And he said all along, if they give me budgets, I will go with whomever. And it's really interesting because until this morning, everybody was saying, okay, so he's going to go with Bibi, he's going to support Bibi. This morning, first headline was the head of that right-wing party that Alon mentioned before, that was the disciples of Kahana, said, we are not going to sit in government or be supported in government by the Islamic Brotherhood. Not happening, not under our watch, not sitting together, not being supported together, not happening. So that is a very dramatic change because now Bibi definitely doesn't have this vote. So now what?
Okay, so the extreme left, the extreme Arab are not joining Bibi, which would have been really great to see how these people can go together. It's like having Martin Luther King and the Ku Klux Klan collaborating together. I mean, they really hate each other. They've been fighting against each other. How can they sit together in a government? It was beyond anyone's ability to imagine, but it's not going to happen. And I say it's not going to happen, but it's Israeli politics. Okay, so take it the way it is. Israeli politics, almost everything is possible, but the likelihood is very slim. So Bibi now, even if Bennett joins him, again, Bennett or the Yamina, the right-wing party that still did not commit to join him, because again, Bennett hates Bibi. Bennett used to be very close to Bibi, but Bibi humiliated him, gave him hard time, so he left the Likud party and started his own party. And that's a story of many people on the right in Israel. Okay, so it's so personal. It's all about personal relationship with Bibi. So even Bennett did not agree yet to join Bibi, but even if he does, it's 59. Who do we have on the other camp, the anti-Bibi? And I do call it anti-Bibi, and I was very happy this morning to read in the Israeli paper who did exactly that, anti-Bibi versus pro-Bibi. Because on Friday, I was forced to create my own chart for the class that I taught, because all of them did left and right. That's a traditional way to divide parties in Israel, but it's irrelevant. Okay, it's really about pro and against Bibi. So on the left side, we have, I already started with the very left, which is Ram, the Muslim Brotherhood. Then we have another Arab party. It's called the United Party. They have 7 seats in the Knesset. Just to remind you, 21% of Israelis, of Israeli citizens are Arabs. 90% of them are Muslims, 10% are Christians and Druze. Okay, so 1/5 of Israelis are Arabs. Last election, the Arabs had 15 seats in the parliament, in the Knesset. This year they have 4 plus 7, they have only 11. And why is that? Because they were not able to unite. And because they were not able to unite and they have been fighting with each other, their supporters decided to stay home. So if the percentage of voting in Israel in general was 64%, among the Arabs in Israel was only 40%, 25% less, because they were fed up with their own politicians, and they are fed up in a way with Israeli politics overall. So only 40% of the Israeli Arabs went to vote, and therefore their representatives have only 11 seats. Just to put it in perspective, If there are 20% of the Israeli population, they have a potential of having 24 seats, right? And they got only 11. The ultra-Orthodox are really good about it, and they got 9 plus 6. They got 17 votes to represent them. Okay, it's because they all unite together, they all go together, and they get what they want. And then we have Sal. Oh, Meretz. You talk about Meretz, your people.
Meretz is the Human Rights Party. It was really scary for them for a moment there because there was a lot of polls that showed that they're like on the cusp of the threshold, so maybe they wouldn't even pass. It's a party that was established in the 70s. It's a very well-respected party, but they passed, and they were very successful from where they're projected. They got 7, right?
They got 7. But they used to be, of course, much bigger because overall the left in Israel is shrinking, okay, significantly. So between the Labor Party and Meretz, they used to have an average of about 50 members of the Knesset, and then they needed few more to join them. And now Gali mentioned Meretz had 7, and the Labor Party also had 7.
Can I ask you a question? It seemed like some of the articles that I saw earlier were that there were some lamentations within certain circles that Meretz and Labor kind of divided, but that they didn't anticipate that Labor and Meretz were going to get as many seats as they did. Is that true?
Yeah, it was at the beginning of this election cycle, which granted was very short. Labor Party had a big leadership problem, and they were, and Labor Party is the party of Rabin, of Peres, of Ben-Gurion, of course, Ehud Barak. So this is the party we're talking about. Their last head was really not well liked, and there was a lot of internal drama. They went down. A young lady by the name of Rabbi Michaeli insisted on having primaries, even though they were not going to have primaries. They had primaries. She won, and she energized the party. And within a very short time, reached, they were also on the cusp of maybe not passing the threshold, and they also got 7 votes, with 7 members, which is remarkable. And it was her campaign was, I was following her campaign. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She got a lot of the female vote. A lot of women voted for her, and it's been really interesting and very successful from their perspective. Another little nugget of thing about this election. So number 4 in the Labor Party, who is now going to be a Knesset member, is Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who is the first Reform rabbi to become a Knesset member. And he was the head of the Center for Jewish Pluralism in Israel, which is the comparable to what the Reform movement, the Iraq, is doing, which basically does all the legal fight for the movement
and social action.
And social action. So he has presented. He's also an attorney, and he presented a lot of cases in the Israeli Supreme Court. So when we talked about the conversion law and all this stuff, he was usually the attorney representing the Reform movement in those cases. And I happened to watch TV today, Israeli TV today, and they interviewed him, and he said, and that was really interesting because that will lead into what we're talking about later in terms of coalition building. He said, we will sit with in government with whomever it is, as long as it's not Bibi, and as long as it's not the those as he called them, crazy right-wingers who are homophobic and anti-xenophobic and misogynist. We're not sitting with them. So any thought of like those kind of combinations are out the window, because they also declared we're not doing this. So the parameters are very clear for a lot of people.
So the Labor and Meretz both have 7, and ideologically they are very close.
Very similar.
Now, let me just say something about left and right in Israel. Left and right is about the question of Arabs. The right originally were the dreamers, started with Jabotinsky, who dreamed of one huge country from the Nile to the Euphrates. So you're running the map of the Middle East in your head. So it's something that includes a lot. It includes Jordan and Syria and parts of Iraq. Okay, this is a biblical description, and that was the idea. We should have the biggest state of Israel possible. Now in 67, when Israel occupied more territories, it became even a more realistic dream, not from the Nile to the Euphrates, but still very big. And they believed that the West Bank and Gaza and some parts of Syria, like the Golan Heights, are a sign from some of them, from God, that we are on the way to achieve this great Israel. They traditionally opposed any peace agreements with the Palestinians, any concession when it comes to return of territories. So when Begin, even though he was from the Likud party and right wing, when he returned the land to Egypt for a peace agreement, they were against him, etc. However, today, it's almost a non-issue. Okay, there's no peace agreement, and on the table, there was a little bit during the Trump plan or Kushner plan, people call it the Abraham Accord, people called it differently, but it didn't go anywhere, and it's not likely for Biden to even take it seriously because it opposes what Biden and his administration perceive as an option. So it's not an issue. So the left and right is not so much, but we still like to look at it in this way. Another party that is important, it's a party that is called New Hope. It's a beautiful name. The head of this party, don't try, in my opinion, too hard to remember his name because he will disappear. His name is Gideon Saar. He was, believe it or not, part of the Likud party. Okay? Many of the new parties that are here all started in the Likud party, but Bibi, if you follow the last 20 years of his rule, whenever somebody became popular and got their own fans, he got rid of them. So Saar was a very popular minister in Israel, was very much loved by Israelis, and Bibi got rid of him. The head of Yamina, Naftali Bennett, also was the closest person to Bibi until he became Bennett very popular, very much loved, and Bibi got rid of him, okay? So if we just take the parties that used to be Likud, Bibi would have been prime minister in 1 second, but they left. So Saar thought that he would get 20 seats in the Knesset. He was popular in the beginning when he announced that he was running. People loved him. There's something about him. He seems like a nice guy, an honest guy. He can talk to all the groups in Israel, from the blue-collar workers to others. But as I unkindly said on Friday, I listened to an hour-long interview with him and needed 2 espressos just not to fall asleep, because he just does not have it. He's good, he's nice, he's kind, he says the right thing, but you just don't want him to be your leader. You understand what I'm saying, right? Sometimes you have it in primaries. When you watch, some of the people just say the right things, everything you think, but your heart says, they're not going to be my candidate because they lack this thing. And so Saar on paper looks like the perfect person to lead the Likud and the right, but apparently got only 6 from the 20 that they predicted for him in the beginning. And most people who started this way disappeared from the political spectrum very quickly. Now, ideologically, again, he belongs with Bibi. They see things the same, more or less the same way, but he made an oath that he will never sit with Bibi. And again, what's so bad about Bibi? That's, I can just speak for many hours, but the big thing is that Bibi has been charged and is standing to trial for serious allegations of corruption. And they say you cannot be prime minister and fighting for your freedom, okay? So even though the court has not yet found him guilty, a prime minister, especially prime minister of Israel, especially right now, when he has to deal with an unfriendly American administration, Iran with a nuclear plan and so many other things, cannot spend most of his time and energy in court defending himself. This is quite a legitimate argument, okay? So forget about Bibi's personal issues with them. They said, no, Bibi should leave, focus on his trial, and then he can come back, okay? So that's that's and the New Hope.
We have guns.
We have guns, which is the second big surprise of this election. If you remember, about 8 months ago when we had the election in Israel, there were two people who were competing. Bibi, the head of the Likud, and Gantz, the head of Blue and White Party. Gantz was the head of the Israeli military, very well-respected person in Israel. So he won 35 seats in the Knesset, which he had a very large party. But he made one mistake. He joined Bibi because they decided to have a rotation, meaning Bibi will be prime minister for half of the time, and then Gantz will be a prime minister for another half. Nobody believed that Bibi will let anyone becoming prime minister. But he did it. He said that he did it for the sake of Israel. It was the beginning of the coronavirus. He said, we need to get together and to fight together against the pandemic. And I'm going to sacrifice myself and to serve under Netanyahu at least for a year and a half, because we had to defeat the virus. And of course, Bibi, a few months before it was Gantz's term to become the prime minister, called new election, okay? So people were angry with him, and more than angry, they looked at him as a fool. And who wants a fool as the prime minister? So most polls predicted that he will not cross the threshold. Okay, so having 35 seats in the Knesset, the best they predicted for him was 4 of hardly passing the threshold. He ended up with 8, right? Which is a great surprise. Nobody. Some of the pollsters in Israel resigned because of it. They said that we messed up completely. Why he won? I can tell you a few of my thoughts. One is that he's really a good guy. He's honest, he's capable, right? You don't become the head of the Israeli military, the chief of staff of the Israeli military, not being an extremely capable man. And there is this kind of honesty that people believed him, that when he said, I'm sacrificing myself because we have a pandemic and we must put our political disagreements aside, people bought it. Still, they were disappointed and he shrank significantly. But at the end of the day, when they were thinking about a prime minister, they can see him as a leader. The other reason is that my parents, I know it's anecdotal, but I know that many other people did it. My parents were really angry with Gantz because they voted for him last time. But when the pollsters were talking about him not crossing the threshold, many people voted for him because they didn't want him to disappear. Okay, it was sort of a consolation, if you want, or a pity vote, call it any way you want, but they wanted him in. They wanted to punish him, but not to kill him. I guess that's a good way to say it. And I guess enough people wanted to do it, and he got 8. Not enough. Yeah.
He went on an apology tour. Part of his campaign strategy was apologizing for trusting Bibi, saying that he was new to politics. He thought this was doing the right thing, and he will not do that again. So that was really interesting because all the commentators told him to his face, because Israeli political the way the interview is brutal. So they said, but we told you not to trust him. Why didn't you listen to us? So it was really, he went on a month-long apology tour. I'm sure it was very painful. It was successful. So
it was success. It was a huge surprise that, so he will not sit with Bibi. The head of the second party, so Bibi has 30. He went down from 36 to 30. So Bibi lost 20% of his votes from the previous election. The second party has 17 now. That's the newest number.
Yes.
And for a while they had 18, but now it's 17.
That's called Yesh Atid, which means there is a future. We'll see about that. They are headed by this former journalist, Yair Lapid, who is, at this point has been, how long has he been in the Knesset? It's been quite a while.
At least 2 decades, and he always has around 18, 17 seats. He's quite... Now, what's interesting is that when Gali and I were still in Israel at the time when he started, he was considered to be on the right. He was right of center. Not as right as Bibi, definitely not as right as the extremists, but he was right of center. And now
he did to be like the center part.
At the center, but slightly right. But now he's considered to be left of center. And he did not change his opinions, only that the left, the entire political spectrum shifted to the right. So people who used to be right of center, if they stayed exactly where they were, they're considered to be left now. If Menachem Begin was alive today, right, the father of the right wing in Israel, of the Likud party, he would have been considered to be probably centrist, if not slightly left of. Okay, because had he stayed where he was, where the Likud party was, remember, he's the one who gave the entire Sinai Peninsula and other things to the Egyptians for a peace agreement. Okay, but he was considered to be the most right-wing person. So everyone shifted right, and now Lapid he has 17. Avigdor Lieberman. You want to take Lieberman?
So Avigdor Lieberman, also known as Yvette Lieberman, and it's really funny because he changed he came from the former Soviet Union. He sat in prison, was a Seruvnik. He was really, came to Israel and he changed his name to Avigdor Lieberman from Yvette Lieberman. And in Israel, they still call him Yvette. When they talk about him on the radio, on the TV, they all call him Yvette. And it's been 30 years, more than that. And he's still, the interviewer calling him Yvette, he says Avigdor. Yvette, Avigdor. It's really funny. But he has started a party years ago for the Russian newcomers, realizing that they have their own needs, their own agendas, their own interests. His party is very right. He was also with Netanyahu at some period, and he was also another one of the people that were with Likud, with Netanyahu, and then had a fallout, and he started his own party. This party has started as a party for the interest of the Russian immigrants. They're very right-wing on the issue of the Palestinian, very liberal when it comes to the whole idea of religion, because most of the Russian Jews are secular. There are a lot of them who are not Jewish, halakhically Jewish, and they have their own interest on that thing, on that issue. And this election cycle, and also the last election cycle, he put the separation of religion and state and more pluralistic Judaism at the forefront of his party. So if 10, 20 years ago, if you said Avigdor Lieberman, you thought, oh, he's a very, very right-wing person. Now, when people think of Avigdor Lieberman, they say, oh, he's the one who really, really resents the power of the orthodoxy in Israel. So his interest shifted. And with that, also his ability to maneuver himself into basically any coalition. He said before the election, I haven't heard any interviews with him since the election, but before the elections, he said he will not sit with Bibi Netanyahu.
He's not supposed to sit with Bibi, but even if he will sit with Bibi, there is no way in the world that he will sit with the ultra-Orthodox. Okay, and there is no separation of the ultra-Orthodox and Netanyahu. So there is no way that Lieberman will go with him. And I think we covered more or less all the parties. And so Bibi does not have 61. The other camp, theoretically, has 61. So why don't they become the government? First of all, there is no apparent leader. Even though Lapid is the head of the second largest party, right? But they have 17. The other thing is that you have some extremes. You have in this part, you have Lieberman, who is politically at least on the right. You have the new party that I told you not to work too hard to remember him. I already forgot his name. Sorry. Is on the right. How can they sit together with Meretz, which is Jewish left, and then with some of the Arabs who are Arab left?
Okay. A lot of maneuvering to put all of them together. It's basically going to be, if all of them can put their egos and their own interests and their own agendas aside, to put a coalition together that will be there in order to get rid of Netanyahu. That is their sole raison d'etre.
And that's the only thing they have in common. Now, I didn't read any article that suggests it, but I will share with you my suggestion that is worth absolutely nothing and has probably no way. But there is only one person on the anti-Bibi camp who has a potential to get everyone's support, and this is Benny Gantz. Because Benny Gantz is tiny bit right of center, but not too much. Nobody has an issue with him, not personal, and unless you're super, I guess, right wing, you have no issue with him as a person, as a politician. And I think that if people ask him to form the government, he can get enough support. He can probably get close to 70 members of the Knesset to support him. The only problem is that his party is small, it's only 8. So how come Lapid, who has 17 members, would allow him to become prime minister when his party size is almost half? Okay, but if there is any chance in the world to avoid a 5th election in the next few months, is if Lapid and others, as Gali said, will put their egos aside and say, no, what? We have to fix the system. Forget about politics. The system has obviously a major glitch here because no sane country should have 4 elections in 2 years, or it can be almost 5 elections in 2 years. The only way to fix the system is to get Bibi out. And when Bibi is out, we will go back to the left-right. And right now, it seems quite clearly that the right will get much more than they need to form a coalition. They'll get 75 votes or something like that. So it's only about one man. And the last 4 elections were about one man. And you can say now, why wouldn't he, Bibi, who understands it better than anyone else, would sacrifice himself for the sake of Israel and the Jewish people? Because he's Bibi. There is no way he'll do it. And the other reason is that as long as he's prime minister, he still has a dream to change the attorney general and to change the courts and somehow to make his legal issues go away. Okay, so there is a chance, hopefully slight chance, but that's his goal really, to make it go away. Because his major object of attacks are the courts, the Israeli courts, and the attorney general. Okay,
Rabbi?
So that's, yes, sir.
If I may interrupt just briefly on that last point you raised, I had read something, I thought, in the Jerusalem Post to the effect that there would be some kind of a ban on his being able to appoint judicial appointees. I don't know if you saw anything about that, and I don't know how accurate that information is.
I saw something similar, but the thing is that there has to be, that can only happen if there's some kind of an agreement where he becomes the prime minister. So, and it has to be an agreement with other parties. It's not so, if Bennett agrees to go with him, one would assume that this will be in the agreement, but
Got it.
I don't know that will be,
Another thing that they talk about along these lines is for enough people to get together, meaning more than 61, and to pass a law that forbids a person who is charged to be a prime minister. Even though he has not been convicted yet, he cannot become the prime minister. Okay? This is another idea.
Hello, Rabbi, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, Joseph Freeman. I have a question for you. I have a political science background. I was talking to a friend of mine, Israeli, and he was talking about changing the system to first past the post. I have a political science degree from University of London as a background. And my question is there much interest in Israel about changing the whole notion of having so many parties to represent one constituency, or a first past the post system as we have in the UK? It's like your comments, please.
So it's a great comment, and I'll take it because of my political science background, I guess. Israel's system has changed in the past. There were one or two elections in the 90s where when you went to the polling booth, you would vote for a party and also for a prime minister. And that changed after, I think, 2 cycles. They decided this was not for them. And now they're talking about doing that again. But changing the system is really complicated, and it requires a lot of agreement. Right now, they can't even agree on who's going to be the next coalition. So agreeing on something so dramatic. I did see in the different proposals that they had, none of them was really serious. But in the different proposals that they had, that this was one of the options that they had. But I think going back to voting for a party and for a prime minister, so that both for the prime minister will be personal, that might make things a little better here. On a little cynical, from a little cynical perspective, I read somewhere today where one of the analysts said, I don't know what you're talking about changing the system. We changed the system. We now go to vote every less than 6 months. And this is our new system. When you do it 4 times in less than 2 years, clearly this is the new system that Israel has. We need to realize that this is our new system and try to prevent this new system. So I thought it was really a very interesting point, because this is not, Israelis realize this is not how democracy should work. Nobody even expects the government to live its full 4 years. It's just not an expectation now. If you can get the government for a year, that's awesome. They haven't passed the budget in 2 years. The country is operating in a pandemic without a budget.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. I'm aware that they're working on 2019 was the last time the budget was actually passed.
Yeah, crazy.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to, I'm sorry.
No.
Bearing in mind Israel's economy is in a very good, has been in a very good shape. The success with the vaccines. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's coming again from a country where you have mainly left and right parties. It has broken down a little bit in the UK. I understand the logic of what's happened, that different groups like the Mizrahi, like the Arab community, like the Russians want their own parties. but it needs a coalition of interests on the left, the right, and center to make a strong 4-year term of a government. Leaving aside issues about Bibi. So that's just my comments, and I'd like to listen to your further response.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's, but you cannot ignore the Bibi because it's only about Bibi, and that's why we divided to anti-Bibi and pro-Bibi. And without him in the picture, it will be exactly as you say. People will be divided according to issues and different interests. But right now, there's one interest. Half of the country wants to keep Bibi, half of the country wants to kick him out. And that's why we had 4 elections, because no matter how you slice the pie, it's still the same.
One comment to follow, to tag on what you said before, was that the change of the threshold to 4%,
Yeah.
for 3.25 was a huge change, because it really got rid of all the bizarre parties that they had. So, the Green Party, which wanted to promote marijuana, the Seniors Party, as if being a senior is an issue on its own that does not, you don't have any other issues. The 700 Russians from various parts of the Soviet Union parties that were there. There was some really, I think at some point, I don't know if he passed or he was very close. There was a guy who was representing divorced dads, and he was very close to passing. So you could have a coalition made of parties that are one member party, and that was a real big salad of a mishmash. And that, at least, we don't see anymore, because you have to have at least 4 members of the Knesset. So at least it's something that has some agenda around it. So that was a good change, I think.
I believe there was a pirate party, something called the Pirate.
There might have been. I don't remember.
Even now, there were 31 parties.
Right.
The ones that
Running, yeah.
We just.
I must tell you, just on a funny. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say on a funny note. I called one of my relatives in Jerusalem, and he was just going upstairs in the elevator to vote with his wife. So I thought that was amusing. Okay, I'm going to press done speaking and listen to further comments. Thank you for your input.
You have a question?
Yes, comment and a question. It sounds like from what you're reporting that it was a much bigger anti-Bibi than a. I don't know why I'm getting an echo here, but the question is, as I recall last time you said, the next step is the president appoints someone to form a coalition. How is that going to happen given the vote that they have now?
Do you want to take it?
Why not?
So the next stage is going to be really going back to the president. The president right now holds the power. President used to be in the Likud. He came from the Likud. Guess who he doesn't like? Bibi. They have personal animosity, a lot of issues. The president was supposed to give the authority to put a coalition to the representative that is going to have the most support. For that, he's going to meet with with all the representatives of all the parties and ask them, who do you recommend? Who do you recommend? Who do you recommend? And he's just going to take a pen and paper and he's going to do the math and going to see who is the one who has the most chance. And he's going to go to that person and he's going to say, I'm giving you 28 days to form a coalition. If this person is not successful, he can get another 2 weeks. And when is this whole thing going to start? Well, the president is not going to do anything, only going to start meeting after Passover, meaning after all of Passover, not just Seder. So the whole thing, 7 days. So for a week, nothing's going to happen. And then he's going to start meetings with people, and he's going to take about a week to 10 days to meet with them. And only then the 28 days will start. Whoever it's going to be, the odds of them actually coming up with a coalition within 28 days are very slim. So they're surely going to have the two weeks extension. And then if that person is not successful, the president is going to give the same task to the next person in line that he think might have a better chance. If that person is not successful, guess what? Fifth election. So that's where this is heading. So within 2 months, we will know if Israel is going into the fifth election or there is some kind of agreement for any kind of party, for any kind of coalition. Even if, in my humble opinion, even if they are managing somewhere, whether Bibi or the other guys, manage to put together some kind of a coalition, I do not believe this coalition will be sustainable for long term. So I believe that even if Israel is not declaring new election within a couple of months, they're going to be declaring new election within a year and a half after, at the most. There's no way that this kind of government with so many conflicting interests that is going to be based on one agenda only, either save Bibi or not save Bibi, is going to be long lasting and 4 years coalition. What do you think?
I agree with you. Do you have more questions?
Also one more thing about the president. That he's about to finish his term. So he really doesn't care.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
You were mentioning the possible person that could not have enough hatred across the anti-Netanyahu group. What is the big barrier to Lapid? I mean, which elements of that rest of that cadre would be, a bore, just not be able to sit with him?
Lapid. Oh, can you hear me? Yes. Lapid is considered. Can you just make sure that all of you are muted, please? Okay, I think it's fine now. Can you hear me? Just nod if that. Okay. Lapid is considered by some of the people on the anti-Bibi group as too much on the left. And Lapid is very vocal in his criticism of the ultra-Orthodox in Israel, okay? So for people like Saar and Bennett, who started the Likud party, who are quite close to the Likud party and to the Orthodox, it's quite hard for them to sit under the leadership of a person who is so anti-ultra-Orthodox. So I think that that's the major thing, and probably Lapid's higher probability of concession in case of a peace agreement with the Palestinians. And also personality. It's just that he is a very outgoing, he's a brilliant, handsome guy, and just represents when you go to Israel, he is this image of Tel Aviv versus Jerusalem, for example, right? With really cool guy, was a TV star, and they just cannot connect with him. Yes.
In your opinion, what part, or what percentage rather, of the anti-Bibi group really agree with his expansion plans into the West Bank?
I don't think he has an expansion plan. If you remember last time, the entire election was about his annexation idea, and then he abandoned it. I don't think that they are ready to do such drastic movements, especially not with Biden as the United States president. If they didn't do it during Trump, they're not going to try it now. But politically or ideologically, being where Bibi is, I would say that about 60–65% of the members of the Knesset can comfortably find themselves under the same roof as Bibi. But I really don't think that there will be any kind of annexation or anything like that. Definitely not in the next 4 years. Okay, so I really enjoyed having this meeting tonight. I hope not to have it again too soon. It's this best deja vu all over again, right? Of doing the same thing. We can be a little bit funny and look at it, but it can be tragic, frankly, for a country like Israel with all the problems, not to have leadership, not to have a government. We really don't know how bad the economy of Israel is going to suffer as a result of the pandemic. We'll start knowing only in June, July. And we don't know what the military challenges will be. The Palestinian Authority is going to have election in May and June, both in Gaza and here. The Iranians will have election in May, June. A lot is going to happen. And you need a strong government to deal with it, okay? And Israel has all but a unified, strong government. They are wasting almost the entire energy on inter-fighting, which is okay when everything is good. So when everything is good, just waste your time any way you want. But we're just about to head into a dire, dangerous, trying time, economically, militarily, diplomatically, and that won't be funny anymore, okay? So now I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned that Israel will not be prepared for the next challenge. And so hopefully something will happen because we need strong Israel, and to have strong Israel, you need strong leadership. And that's the way it works. On this note, I would like to wish all of you happy Passover.
Happy Passover.
And Shabbat Shalom.
And Mazel Tov, Toby.
And oh, Mazel Tov, Toby. Oh. Yeah, Toby, her picture froze. Her granddaughter got married last weekend.
Mazel tov, Toby.
Have a good night, my friend.
Good night. Thank you.
That's the mail.
Thank you.